Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program mega worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, your comedian and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
I'm right out of the gates. I feel like I owe an apology to everybody that's listening on the radio today because there's just nothing going on. You know, the news is. I mean, it's pretty minor. There's a lot of. I feel like I should just do 2 hours of traffic. This is. You know, between last week and this week, I don't think either one of us was really full sail betting on you know, the end times. You know, rapturing at any point. And yet, anybody who listened to Vladimir Putin's speech went, uh-oh, and didn't think for a second, oh, you're moving yourself around on camera. That's good.
Yeah, I'm trying.
It's much better. No, it's good. I just,
okay.
yeah,
Whoa,
hold still.
Whoa.
I moved you,
All right.
you moved. All right, we're fine.
All right.
We're streaming live at infotainmentwars.com. Who needs the documents? Although today we have the documents. Because there's so much to talk about. Let's jump right in with the whole everything old is new again. Everything seems like a reboot. And you know, now that Biden's in office after the Obama-Biden situation where Putin was like, well, nobody's going to give me Ukraine, so I'm just going to have to take it. So I'm going to start salami slicing it for myself. And then Trump ran and won and then ended up basically like, I'll give it to you. If you want it, you can have it. And so Putin basically laid off for the 4 years because he knew that you know, Trump was already arguing for him to be back in the G7 and turn it back into the G8 with them in there. He was ready to recognize, he brought it up multiple times, that Crimea is Russia, and like he was basically inching towards Putin's instruction to basically do the Trump language version of the speech that Putin gave out the other night before all this nonsense started, where he, you know, touted the importance of the fact that Ukraine's not even a real country, and if it is, it's ours anyways, and also we have to denazify it because there's a Jew running it, and that's the clearest
protect our democracy.
It's the clearest sign. Yes, and we have to. Yes, and we're in danger.
Yeah,
because of the encroachment of NATO, which they asked about, like the last time Ukraine was asked about, you know, entering NATO was in 2008. And you know, and wasn't even again after 2014, after Crimea and Donbass, you know, because of the Russian adventurism, because that would be the easiest way for NATO countries and the United States to be dragged into a ground war with Russia, which nobody wants, because effectively it's a gangster kleptocracy and he doesn't care about his own people. So what does he care if a bunch of them get blown up? As long as he's in the right bunker when the nuke goes off, he thinks he's going to survive for however many more years he's got left on Earth. And he's gotten, where do we start? Okay. Putin has gotten fairly kooky over the last little bit. Now, I, as someone who recognizes the Machiavelli, yes, I know kooky firsthand. Thank you for pointing that out, Johnny. By the way, follow Johnny on Twitter at JohnnyMillion1, the number one.
I got a million of them.
Yep. And you know, when Putin put this speech out and started acting kind of like a guy who'd been, I don't know, hunkered down in a bunker for 2 years, paranoid of COVID and his country being taken away from him, and started talking about the denazification of a country that had a democratically elected Jewish person running it, I was like, that sounds nuts. But then I remembered he used to be in the KGB. And part of the thing that you do when you're small and you want people to be afraid of you, if they're not scared of you because you can't physically take them, one of the ways you can scare people, and as a diminutive person myself, who's only about 4 or 5 inches taller than Vladimir Putin, which is a weird thought. I know this well, which is pretend you're crazy. That's just make them think you're nuts, because it's amazing how there's a lot of guys in the world who will take on a guy their size. If a guy breaks into your house, you're going right at him. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing here? And after the shock wears off of there's a stranger in my house, you're picking up a chair, you're diving towards him, you're doing all kinds of stuff. But a squirrel, a squirrel, you're like, what? Don't touch it ever. Like the biggest, buffest dude in the world will be running scared from, a squirrel running around the house, because it'll get in your hair and it's crazy and it might bite you and it might scratch you and it might have a disease and you can't figure out which way it's going to go. And it's, and so there's a little bit of squirrel tactics in Putin possibly wanting the world to think he's nuts and might trigger a nuclear war. So this might all be stagecraft so that he can salami slice another chunk of Ukraine and keep it. And that's got to be part of the thinking that's going on in the DOD and in the foreign ministry offices all over the world and in the NATO countries. However, there does seem to be some genuine linkage to some crazy go nuts elements of his personality that when you look at him talking, it doesn't look like acting. It doesn't look, he normally has this, if he wanted you to think he was nuts, it would be the quiet kind of nuts. He's that kind of narcissistic, that kind of macho over the years. He likes the idea that he looks cold. He likes the idea people think he looks like a killer. He's enjoying in his in his advancing years looking more like Donald Pleasance in an early Bond film. Short of all he needs is a cat and a scar over his eye, and he's like 6 blocks away from a volcano lair, and he knows this, and he knows how off-putting it is, and he knows that he's got more nuclear weapons than any country on Earth, more than us, because we've denuclearized a lot of our setup, and we still have some because he's got some, and we still got some because China has some, and we still got some because we're worried that Iran might get some, right? But he's got the most. Now, they're rickety, and if he sets them off, they very well may bounce against the inside of the silo they're in and explode and cascade across and destroy their electrical grid and trigger Balthorium G. If you've watched Doctor Strangelove, but this turn over the last week though looks like in a sort of incapacity. It looks like not only is he genuinely playing this card, not only is he wanting, acting out and seeming, and strangely believing, basically treating Ukraine like Hitler was talking about the Sudetenland, and Poland, already a part of Germany. It's just a matter of taking it, those kind of things. Really scary talk from a European leader, especially one that was involved with the Nazis at one point. So there, in my head, I've been balancing the two. This, on the one hand, he's completely capable of BSing the entire world into thinking he's crazy because it gives him leverage, because they have a tiny economy. Their only export is fuel oil. The world is committed. The Paris Accord itself is an act of demand destruction for fossil fuel. That's what it's for, so that none of us ever need Russia or Saudi Arabia or, in many ways, Chinese coal, I suppose, in some cases, ever again. And once that happens, what do if you're those countries? Sell dates and rugs and vodka and nesting dolls and try to come up with a better television? Start from scratch competing with Samsung in the United States? No. You clamor to keep your resource-based economy as long as you can, and you tighten your grip around it. Well, one of the things that stood out to me in the story around the how well the Ukrainians are doing right now. And I've got after the break, I want to read to you from some of the stories that are coming from Kyiv itself, from the Kyiv Independent. They're doing basically an hour by hour tracking of what's going on in the country beyond what we're seeing. Because if you watch the news, it's all, Russia is encroaching on cities and eventually they're going to take it. It's a foregone conclusion. Well, not so fast. Because for Russia to take these cities, for Russia to take this country, they have to be willing to kill most of the people there. And it does not seem like the Russian forces themselves, because a lot of them have relatives there, are willing to do that. One of the pilots that landed his plane and then surrendered said, first of all, he asked for food and water because he hadn't eaten, and he was dehydrated. And secondly, he didn't know he was being sent in to attack Ukraine. He'd been BS that he was flying sorties to protect Russians, separatists over this particular area, and then they were telling him to strike places with Ukrainians in it, and he didn't do. He wouldn't do it.
Really, they're giving their soldiers bait and switch orders.
Yeah, what an odd thing. No, well, so let's take a break real quick, and when we come back, this all relates back to Trump's perfect phone call. In a very specific way.
Right after you sent it to me, it's horrifying.
Oh yeah, but there's a very specific part of it that is important, to what's happening on the ground right now. It is making a distinct difference in this battle for the Ukrainians, and it showed up in that call, and it was the hinge point of the call itself. It's what got him in trouble, was the pretext for this moment. I'll talk to you about it when we come back. How was that for a tease? Okay. You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We'll be back. I'm going to have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And the guitar note, and then with progressive. And all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And the guitar note, and then with progressive. And all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
The Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. So it's been sorry I dropped off there in Chicago for some reason. Hopefully we fixed it. We're being attacked by the Russians. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. And Johnny Million now on the live feed at twitch.tv/Hal Sparks. Don't forget to subscribe. You look shorter than me, it makes me feel good.
I do. I can fix this. My seat is really low. Can I come up a little?
Yeah, raise your seat. There you go.
All right.
Dun, da, 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 da. So in trying to find out what's going on, hour to hour, I was up very late last night. I have not slept a lot in the last 3 days while this has been going on. Because the real story about what's happening moment to moment happens about the time we're going to bed. That's when dawn is, about 10 o'clock at night over here. And so wanting to know what's going on, I just end up staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning watching the news as it rolls in on all kinds of international live feeds. I even found on YouTube a series of live cameras in Kyiv of 6 different traffic cameras all running at once where you could see what was going on. And yeah, fascinating stuff. And it's not, and by the way, it's not insomnia, it's interest. I'm curious and interested. So, but it's still hard to find out from news sources what's actually going on in the country, moment to moment, hour by hour. So I was lucky enough to stumble upon and I'm going to open it up on the thing. There you go. So me and Johnny and some
text
stuff.
This article's terrifying.
The one from which one are you talking about?
The CNN one.
Oh, yes. Oh, well, we'll get to that in just a second. Oh,
Okay.
boy, are we going to get to that. So, but first, hold on. I'm trying to fix Johnny in the screen for everybody because that's just how I operate. All right, there we go.
And now I'm on top of the text.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I fixed it. We're
I'm-
all good. Done. Did it. So,
I'm trying to lose weight and look at my background. See,
so
it's
just
my
in the
backside.
last little bit, this is 6 p.m. in Ukraine. There's I think 3 or 4 time zones there. In Borodyanka, Kyiv Oblast, a Russian missile hit a private residential house in the village and destroyed it completely, killed 3 people. In Kherson Oblast, an ambulance cat transporting injured people was shelled on one of the oblast roads and medical personnel were injured. In Mariupol, as the result of airstrikes on the city, at least 3 civilians are reported dead, 1 child injured. At 5 o'clock in the Black Sea, Russian fighter jet Cu-30 was shot down by a Ukrainian missile over the Black Sea. Kharkiv, Russian armed forces shelled a civilian bus, 14 people injured, at least 1 person dead. In Ukraine, Ukrainian army forces have blown up all the Russian Ukrainian railway junctions to prevent enemy forces from deploying soldiers and military equipment to Ukraine. 4 o'clock, the Black Sea. Russian warship reportedly hit its own Russian military plane with a missile. General Staff of Ukraine's Army Forces said this. It is yet unclear if this firearm was an accident. I'm pretty sure if they shot down their own plane, it was an accident. I mean,
that's a real bad own goal.
I mean, maybe it's like the video of Alex Jones smacking himself in the face just to look tough. In Saratna, an air raid was carried out on Saratna village, not far from Mariupol. At least 3 people have died. In Chernihiv Oblast, 2 Russian tanks were destroyed in Chernihiv Oblast. Ukrainian army forces took control of 2 more, according to the North Military Command. So they blew up 2 tanks, and they took 2 tanks from the Russians. Now, the tank part is really interesting because the big story around, the weapons that the European community and the United States have been giving to Ukraine to help them. What's very well known, and I've got it up on the screen on the live stream. It's a little small, but Turkey gave them drones. They got Stinger missiles from Latvia and Lithuania. They're getting 152 millimeter artillery ammunition from the Czech Republic. They're getting from the UK. They're getting these light anti-tank weapons, these NLAWs. And from us, they're getting the Javelin anti-tank guided missiles. That's the stuff we've given them. We've given them a lot of other stuff too. We've given them food and supplies, and we're doing refugee help in Poland. All the NATO countries, our troops, again, are helping with the refugees as they're coming through and making sure they have food and all that kind of stuff. But also, we're also giving them covert help. We're not going to hear about that for 10 years. But
I was hoping about that.
Yeah. We're doing a bunch of that. Trust me. Everybody is. The UK, France is, even Germany. Germany's playing nice because if we do normalize, they want to go back to getting oil and gas from Russia and okay, everybody play nice. That they're going to play carrot. We're going to be stick. That's how they tried, to lay this all out. So why is the Javelin anti-tank guided missile such an important part of this story? Well, one is it's an incredible piece of hardware, to quote the Brian Williamses of the world. It's different than the NLAW, which is basically an eyeball, it's like a bazooka. It's not a fire it and forget it kind of a thing. It doesn't target it, the NLAW, it has some targeting on it, obviously. Like they laser target it with somebody else, but it's basically a giant bazooka that can take out a tank. The Javelin is basically like a short range ballistic missile that can take out, it's guided. They laser onto a tank and then it finds that tank. right? It's not looking for a heat sensor. It's exactly the target they want. It's a big deal. And it's really useful when Russia was planning on armored columns as a way to take the country. They don't want to strafe bomb the place because they want the architecture intact when they take the country. Unlike Chechnya, where they didn't care, under the pretense that this is really Russian territory and all those old churches and all those old buildings are really Russian buildings, it doesn't help Putin's case to blow them all to smithereens. So what he wants is surround them with tanks, have soldiers come out. You lose some soldiers, but they can't just hit it with ballistic missiles and then just take the land and suck the oil out from under it, which is what they wanted to do in Chechnya and Georgia and places like that. This is a whole different battle plan. And the story around it is kind of crucial as far as Putin's narrative, that we're just trying to run the Nazis out. We don't want to hurt any Ukrainians. They're the ones who are the victims. We're there to help, right? That's the BS story he's been telling. Well, that doesn't work if you strafe bomb the country. So you got to send in tanks. Everybody knows this is the pretext he's wanted to use. This, and the Obama-Biden administration knew this. Arguably, the military people under Trump administration knew this. So what can we do that doesn't violate, doesn't push us into a land war with them? Make it like NATO's operating, like firing our own missiles or sending our own drones across. What can we do that best serves them to deal with the threat that's right in front of them? Javelins. That's the big thing that they wanted. And we got them. We were sending them to them. The Congress allocated Javelin missiles for them. And if you'll recall, they were part of the conversation of the perfect phone call between Donald Trump and President Zelensky. And I quote, this is Zelensky talking. "I would also like to thank you for your great support in the area of defense. We are ready to continue to cooperate for the next steps. Specifically, we are almost ready to buy more Javelins from the United States for defense purposes." That was the ask. That's what he needed. More, they don't need guns. They use AK-47s largely. They use Russian guns right back at them. It's not, they don't need a lot, claymores, that kind of stuff. A lot of that they can buy anywhere. But the Javelins are magical for what they need, especially considering the threat they are up against, which is tanks from Russia on their streets. They wanted the Javelins for this reason. And they were asking for it. In his phone call to the President of the United States, it's the one military item he name drops. And as soon as he brings it up, what does Donald Trump say? "I would like you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine." They say CrowdStrike. I guess you have one of your wealthy people, the server. They say Ukraine has it. There are a lot of things that went on, the whole situation. I think you're surrounding yourself with some of the same people. I'd like to have the Attorney General call you and your people, and I'd like to get to the bottom of it. As you saw yesterday, the whole nonsense ended with a very poor performance by a man named Robert Mueller, an incompetent performance, but they say a lot of it started with Ukraine. Whatever you can do, it's very important that you do it if that's possible. That was the ask. I'd like you to do us a favor, though. And by the way, that favor was, we got to take a break, but I'm going to send Rudy Giuliani over. You're going to talk to him, meaning the real nitty gritty of this dirty conversation, you're going to have with him. He's going to have instructions. None of it will be written down. You guys sit across from each other. He's going to tell you what I need. And what he ultimately had Rudy ask for was a press conference where Zelensky would announce that they were looking into corruption by the Bidens in Ukraine. And in exchange for that, then you get your Javelins. Well, we now know that that Trump's alignment with Putin was at least part of it. The awareness was that the Javelins were the thing you wanted to hold off giving them. That's, if Putin wants us to hold back anything, it was the Javelins, because of the strategy he is playing out right now.
I have
We'll
questions.
be back right after this. Yeah, it's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. This was the quid pro quo.
This is Damian Perdue of Think Theory Radio, Saturdays at 6 p.m. You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I thought there was going to be like a new one every break. I was so excited.
You want more, Hal? We'll give you more. Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT, May 20. Hoo-yah!
A lot of people are talking about that, the way they shut your very good prosecutor down, and you had some very bad people involved. That's the prosecutor that was a sock puppet for Russia, that was guaranteeing, was undermining the Ukrainian government, and that we weren't going to give billions of dollars worth of loan guarantees to Ukraine unless that guy was gone, because he wasn't prosecuting any of the Russian sock puppets. He was guaranteeing them space in the government. And the Obama administration and Congress and the National Security Council and all the Senate committees dealing with it had all known about this dude, and they're like, yeah, we don't want to give Ukraine money if this guy's gonna get his mitts on it. And so Biden was charged with going over there and telling him, get rid of this guy or you don't get the money. That's why I think it was like the Council for Foreign Relations at this forum that he was at, where they keep playing video like it was sneaked video of him. We caught Biden talking about this. Like, he's on a stage. He's bragging about the fact that he was carrying out the will of the American people via their representatives and the entirety of the administration. He even says in the thing, the guy goes, well, I'm going to call Obama and see if this is real, and tell him you said that. And Biden's like, call him. I'm delivering the message. This wasn't my idea. I'm not against it. I mean, he's obviously on board with it, but he knew this guy was bad. Okay, so that guy gets broomed, now lives in Russia under the protection of Vladimir Putin, by the way, as does Yanukovych, who worked with Paul Manafort, who then went on to work for the Trump campaign for free and was contacting his Russian sock puppets going, well, if I do certain things in conjunction with Trump and act as an intermediary, will that make us whole? Trump follows up that they shut your good prosecutor down. Dude was completely corrupt, a criminal. Mr. Giuliani is a highly respected man. He was the mayor of New York City, a great mayor, and I would like him to call you. I will ask him to call you along with the Attorney General. Rudy very much knows what's happening, and he's a very capable guy. If you could speak to him, that would be great. The former ambassador from the United States, the woman, was bad news, and the people she was dealing with in Ukraine were bad news, so I just wanted to let you know that. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about about that. So whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution, so if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me. And by the way, he didn't brag about stopping the prosecution. He bragged about getting rid of a prosecutor who, if he was still in charge, Zelensky wouldn't have won his election. And Zelensky knows this. Like, Trump is talking to Zelensky in this moment like he doesn't know his own country's recent history. But the idea is that Rudy Giuliani and Bill Barr were going to follow up on this phone call and give him the real conversation, because their conversations, especially Rudy's, there's no transcript, because Rudy was not part of the administration. So Rudy will do the tee up. He'll tell you what you need to do. You'll call Bill Barr and tell him what you're gonna do, and then he'll tell me, and I'll pretend to just find out about it. I mean, it's amazing. And we went through this with the impeachment hearing, and it's grotesque. And looking back on the current threat, and knowing that Vladimir Putin's strategy right now, his primary methodology of invading Ukraine has been armored columns of tanks and trucks, means that limiting his access to those javelins and delaying them possibly interminably to get himself reelected so that they wouldn't have them, and then Putin could just roll in. Because if anybody thinks that the timing of this changed based on our election, if it did, it was a matter of months, not a matter of a year. This was on schedule for Trump 2.0. And it's extraordinary that there's not more of a that there's not more of a linkage that people are making, I think, about the impeachment of Donald Trump and his attempt to deny arms. And by the way, at that point, Zelensky's saying, I need these anti-tank weapons. I need these javelins. We okayed money for them to buy stuff. In that was money that they would basically buy the javelins, and we would allow them to buy them with our money. If they don't get them, then they spend it in England buying the MLAWs, or they use something else. They just buy mortars or something to try and fight back against these tanks. There's no reason to believe, based on this phone call and based on Trump's attitude towards Ukraine the entire time he was in there, and his playing footsie with Putin the entire time he was there and wanting to welcome him back into the G8. There is nothing in this that says to me that he was going to allow them to buy the javelins. He could have interrupted that purchase. He couldn't stop the money, but he could stop what they could spend it on. And that part of it, I think, is fascinating and will be a part of the history of this for for years to come. Like, this will get threaded together eventually, besides, somebody like me bringing it up.
These are two things that I'm really looking forward to reading about years from now, are COVID and this whole thing with Trump and Russia.
Right. With the perspective of, and that's how he ended up in jail.
God, that would be amazing.
Meanwhile, literally, as I'm saying, today, 2 Russian tanks were destroyed in Chernihiv. I know I'm mangling the pronunciation.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try a lot of these.
2 tanks were destroyed, and another 2 were taken. More than likely, they were the 2 tanks that were destroyed were taken out with Javelin missiles that we gave them. That Trump tried to do it. Yeah. Trump absolutely withheld them. That was the point of it. We were defensive at first, and then we okayed we'll do that when we come back on the break, because I want to go into a little bit of the history of the back and forth as we're trying to placate Russia, make them not feel stressed out after NATO wrote a letter saying, if you guys want to join, you can, but we're not insisting. And after that, all the ratcheted up tension with Russia that has started basically at that point, and the expansion of NATO, that every time Russia seems to, and certainly Vladimir Putin, seems to be bringing about this, pushing this idea that the reason they are engaged in all this, surrounding Ukraine or putting weapons on their border or acting aggressively is because of the NATO expansion. And yet every NATO expansion has been in an answer to Russia moving into Georgia, Russia claiming Crimea and in the Luhansk and Donetsk regions. Every time NATO expands, it's because, they're thinking about moving this way. This guy might actually think he can take Turkey at some point. So we need to give them, another protection on their flank. And now it looks like Sweden and Finland are going to want to join NATO. Russia is threatening them aggressively. Well, why do they want to join all of a sudden? They didn't before all this nonsense. Why is it that Sweden and Finland are all of a sudden wanting to join NATO? because they don't trust Russia anymore. They don't trust that they're comfortable with the world order, and they want
They believe
backup.
that NATO will have their back before Russia will.
Absolutely. And they don't want to be in the same situation that Ukraine is in, where we can give you arms, but we can't step in to help you, or the force of us possibly stepping in to help you doesn't protect you in the first place like it does the other countries. Yeah, Putin, Carter in the chat says stupid, Putin revived NATO. Absolutely. Trump was helping him kneecap it, and then he went and blew it by being overt when he should have been covert. I mean, he tried everything covert and it just failed. Again, this is plan B because plan A was a massive failure. So anyways, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Our dear friend Philip, who's been talking to us about these issues, I might be on a plane right now or asleep because he's been up all night watching this stuff. It's kind of crazy. Hopefully we'll touch base with him if he's either can show up in the chat or call in at some point. We'll be back after this.
It's time! It's time!
Guess who's back?
Scary.
Back again.
Hal Sparks.
Back. Tell a friend.
You want to get sued?
So yeah, Hal Sparks is back, y'all.
I love him!
I'm Art,
I'm Bobby.
the host of
Oh,
Where
boy.
Are They Now? Now let's get back to the Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide.
Hey, listen.
Hey, listen. So, hey,
Heel
listen.
Sparks.
So, yes. So in 2015, right after Russia pushed into Crimea and Donbass, and we were dealing with all that, and everybody was like, are we ratcheting up for war? Is this, that was the big concern. And that was one of the reasons why the United States was gun shy, no pun intended, in their response. In our response, I happen to be an American, in our response to Russia pushing in there was because you're dealing with a nuclear power who has seized these two territories, seems to have stopped, and they're in many ways you're like, okay, maybe he's stopped this. Is this peace now? You know what I mean? We've dealt with this similar things in the Middle East. Is there a moment where we'll call it a draw, right? The Black Knight is not invincible after all. So in 2015, post Donbass and Crimea, the polling this is fascinating considering where Republicans are right now, how quickly this all turned. Republicans and Democrats, this is from Pew, sharply divided on how tough to be with Russia. Okay, this is in 2015. This is in the lead up. This is before, arguably before Trump, it's June. So, there's an argument that he's part of the equation, right? So in these questions, the U.S. should use military force to defend a NATO ally from Russia. Republicans say 69% yes. Democrats only say 47% yes at this point. This is in 2015. Support NATO sending arms to Ukraine. Democrats 39%, Republicans 60%. Increase sanctions on Russia. Both of them were below 50, but Democrats said no. 23% of Democrats said we should increase sanctions on Russia. 40% of Republicans said we should. Support Ukraine joining NATO. 59% of Democrats agreed that they should join NATO. 71% of Republicans thought they should. What happened? Russia is a major military threat to its neighboring countries. 56% of Democrats said yes. 67% of Republicans said yes. Russia mostly to blame for military violence in eastern Ukraine. Democrats 39% said yes. 50% of Republicans said yes. So they were evenly divided on it. I think that's an ignorance issue for most. Support Western countries sending economic...
That's such a common issue.
Yeah. Support Western countries sending economic aid to Ukraine. 60% of Democrats were for it. 69% of Republicans were for it. 2 years later, the Republican presidential candidate, then president, would strong arm Ukraine using weapons to try and secure his reelection and to benefit Vladimir Putin. And currently, right now, CPAC is a Putin love fest. Those folks, well, he's a strong leader.
Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
CPAC, and these conservative, quote unquote, patriots are gaslighting all of his motives and just writing everything that he's doing, saying that they admire his Christian values, like just absolutely insane stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a white ethno state. That's why they like Russia. I would love to have a conversation with any of these folks about gun rights. There are none in Russia. You can have a rifle, but they count your ammunition. If you go out hunting with 10 bullets and you come back with 9 bullets and you're missing a shell, if you don't pick up your brass and bring it home, you'll get on a watch list. You have to have a gun license for a rifle for 5 years before you can get a handgun license. And even then, you got to be connected. And it can be taken away at any time by a simple fiat of government. So that part of it's amazing to me. I'm like, yeah, somebody I think there should go, we should have the same Second Amendment that Russia has. And I'm sure what they think that means is like, everybody gets a free AK-47. Yeah, when they send you off to war to shoot your cousin.
But they only have 2 genders. Woo!
Right, yeah. It's easy to think there's no, they don't have an LGBTQ, quote, problem over there when nobody's allowed to talk about it. Yeah. Yes, and Dr. 13 in our chat also brings up that there are no guns allowed at CPAC. It's weird they don't have open carry there. I don't know why.
Really?
You know what I mean? Aren't there enough good guys there with a gun that if they turned out to be a bad guy with a gun, they could handle it? I mean, come on. All right.
It really seems like that's... never mind.
Meanwhile, Secretary Antony Blinken, hold on one second, authorized the Department of Defense to provide an additional $350 million in immediate military assistance to Ukraine to help defend itself from Russia's unprovoked and unjustified war, #United with Ukraine. That $350 million is a significant, that is almost equal to the entire pay of the Russian military. Okay, the soldiers that Putin is sending in to have their helicopters shot out of the sky by somebody that knows their wife's cousin because they're being sent there to topple the government on his behalf while he sits in his COVID bunker behind a bunch of TV sets like the world's oldest gamer. We have authorized $350 million in military assistance, and that is equal to what all the soldiers and all the pilots and all the medics in the Russian military will make as a salary. And that piece of news would scare you if you were meant to run into that country. It's all javelins, right? Well, we're also the javelins are already being sent. That's other stuff. This is anti-tank mines and all kinds of other stuff so that they can and air defense. Because the other aspect of it is that Russia, they're worried that Putin's going to get tired of waiting and start firing ballistic missiles from the Black Sea and shelling the major cities. Going, well, basically everybody's left the country. So that it should be fine. That should be fine. You know, we're just
Yeah.
empty buildings. Meanwhile, not everybody's left. You know, there's like 100,000 refugees across the border into Poland. There's 45 million people in that country, in Ukraine. Even if 5 million refugees overwhelm all of their border countries, there's still 40 million of the people in that country. And they're hiding, you know, there was a baby born in one of the train stations, in the underground train station, during the shelling. I mean, this is like, how would Trump put it? He's got a way of putting it. It's no, because he knows history better than most of us.
Winston Churchill stood on the rooftops in London, very calm, making speeches. Winston Churchill.
Yeah, that's it's one of those moments in history. By the way, 773-763-9278 is our number. We're going to have a new SCOTUS member too, by the way, because we have a president that can walk and chew gum and doesn't care if his polls are down for a while because he did the hard job nobody else wanted to do, like get us out of Afghanistan. You don't think that was also a factor? Because can I just say for the record, this $350 million that we're giving in assistance to the Ukrainians to fight back against the Russians, that's how much we were spending in Afghanistan every single day for 20 years. Little under that, 300 million, about 280, something around that there. And it went up at times and down at times, but the average out was about $300 million a day. A day for us to be in Afghanistan. Doing what? Painting a target on our back so that the East Turkestan independence movement can shoot at us instead of going after China for what they're doing to the Uyghurs. This is, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Like and subscribe. Go to infotainmentwars.com. Give us a thumbs up. Support the show. Patreon.com/Hal Sparks. We'll be back.
Psycho, psycho.